Hello and welcome to Behind the Wall. I'm Stan Grant. Xi Jinping has increased pressure on Taiwan to rejoin the mainland, saying he would use force if necessary. As a result, cross-strait relations are now at their lowest point in decades, with senior figures in Australia warning of potential war.
I think China has been very clear about the reunification, and that's been a long-held objective of theirs. I just think people need to be realistic about the activity. When there's militarisation of bases across the region, obviously there's a significant amount of activity, and there's an animosity between Taiwan and China.
Well, in response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged Australia to adhere to its One China policy. But what does this mean? Sow Keat Tok is a lecturer at the Asia Institute of the University of Melbourne, and he joins me now. It's nice to have you with us. I want to get to that broader question of Australia and Australia's relationship with China and this moment, particularly with tensions around Taiwan. But just more broadly, do you believe that we are edging ever closer to a conflict that, as has been put, the drum beats of war are now sounding?
Well, I don't think things are as bad as they sound at the moment. I think we have to look at things from a more historical perspective. One China policy has been there for decades, okay, and it started off because of the Civil War and the competition between the Kuomintang in Taiwan and the Chinese Communist Party in China competing over each other for international recognition. So as much as China has this One China policy, Taiwan has a similar One China policy as well. So this is not something that is, that happened just today. Indeed, we see an escalation of how China has positioned itself vis-a-vis Taiwan. I think under Xi Jinping, over the last few years, we have seen from previously they refused to renounce violence or to use the use of violence in reunification to a more assertive, bottom line, we will use violence kind of statement. So that is something that we probably need to take into take note. And on top of that, there's also this dimension about China's domestic politics, whether or not Xi Jinping will take upon himself the historical role to reclaim back Taiwan. That is something that is very personal, and I don't think international observers can directly get a sense of what is going to happen.
There's a lot to unpack there. Let me just start with that One China policy and how that is interpreted. Most of the world, Australia included, recognises a One China. But as you point out, Taiwan and the mainland have very different ways of interpreting just what that means. Is it possible for the status quo to hold? That is, that there is no action from the mainland to force the reunification, but there is also in Taiwan no move towards independence. Have we passed that point now, or can that still hold?
I think that can still hold for a while, at least in the foreseeable future. I don't think there is something that, there's always a big if there. Whatever I've said, it's like there are too many variables playing into this Taiwan cross-strait relations. So at the moment, things seems to be stable as they are. There's a lot of saber rattling from China's end, but there is no real political will, as far as I see, in trying to forcefully reunify with Taiwan.
You identified that this means a lot, particularly to Xi Jinping. As you've also pointed out, there is an historical issue here going back to 1949, at the end of the Civil War, the victory of the communists on the mainland, and then the Kuomintang, of course, fleeing to Taiwan. So there is a sense of unfinished business here. Are you able to look into this and say, for our audience, why this matters so much to someone like Xi Jinping that he would potentially talk about using force to reclaim Taiwan? Why does it matter so much?
It's a matter of orthodoxy, really. Who is the rightful owner of this title called China? I think there is this carryover of the idea that China should be a unified whole, and that has been the kind of narratives that have gone through not just in during the Civil War, but even before the Civil War, when Sun Yat-sen and the others were trying to bring back the entire China under one single regime. So this is something that has been is a carried over in history, and the political parties subsequently just brought upon themselves that there should, China, whatever territories that it inherited from the Qing dynasty, the empire, should tightly come under a single unified regime.
Sow Keat Tok, there is a bit of a chicken and egg here, isn't there, when we look at why the relations have deteriorated? Is it because of the more aggressive stance of Xi Jinping and some of that more aggressive language, increased military exercises around Taiwan, the threats of force, or was that precipitated by an increasing popularity in Taiwan of a more direct move towards independence? Which has led, do you think, to this point that we're now at?
I think you have rightly pointed out it's really a chicken and egg question. I don't think there is an answer to that because they kind of feed upon each other in developing to what it is today. There is no doubt that there are real sense of I think Xi Jinping himself has this idea that he needs to at least maintain the house in order. So whatever that is going on in Taiwan, there will be very strong reactions from him to push back against it. And we are seeing since the 1990s, the gradual democratization of Taiwan politics and the on and off, movement towards independence, greater independence. So far, I think the political parties, in particular, I'm talking about the Green Green parties in Taiwan, they have refrained from pushing too far ahead towards independence in things like, restraining from declaring independence outright, limiting their international pursuit of recognition and the independence rhetorics, etc., etc. But that said, there was still, they were still trying to inch towards that independence eventuality. And that is causing a lot of angst within China because the CCP cannot afford to lose Taiwan. And a party that loses Taiwan, whether it's CCP or the KMT, the Kuomintang, will never stand to that kind of scrutiny. Legitimacy-wise, it will be bankrupt altogether.
A final thought from you then on the great power rivalry between the US and China and how this plays into that. As you say, that for the mainland, for Xi Jinping, it would be unthinkable if they were to be embarrassed or humiliated if there was a move towards independence. It was something they couldn't countenance. Similarly, what about the United States? If there was an action from the Chinese Communist Party, if there was an invasion of Taiwan, what would the US do? We know that it has in the Taiwan Relations Act, it is there to support Taiwan, but that doesn't necessarily mean putting troops on the ground. What would it mean for the United States? What would the US do? And how does Australia factor into that?
I think it's very important that you brought up United States because this has not been discussed earlier on. But this is exactly what I mean by there are lots of moving blocks in this whole scenario. The role of United States in the past 4 years, whether it's during Trump administration or under the new Biden administration, there has been closer ties between Taiwan and the United States, and that is probably causing some form of anxiety within Beijing. Reason being, Washington has been the main pillar that is supporting or guaranteeing Taiwan's de facto independence at the moment. So the involvement of United States in the unlikely event of a conflict will definitely escalate matters. There is no doubt, okay, right now, I think from the Biden administration that they will get involved in Taiwan should a conflict occur. And that has been conveyed very clearly to Beijing. But I do see that things will come to a point where it will not de-escalate, but it will kind of plateau off. The kind of tension will plateau off. The tension will remain there, but it should not boil over if clear minds prevail in Beijing and Washington.
Yeah, that's certainly the hope for outcome. Sow Keat Tok, it's a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you again for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me.